pretty dismal showing for May, hey? Because we had a bad showing in April, so everybody thought, yeah, the market's going to bounce back in May, and it really didn't.
Yeah, I think it goes back to the initial estimates that most of the industry experts have been giving for the entire year for 2011. As you know, it ranges between 7.5 of the most conservative people to about 15% of more optimistic people. Year to date, if you look at the last 5 months compared to 2010, it's a growth of 16.4. So we're ranging back towards that number that was expected by the industry.
And of course, when you came in a few months ago and we were seeing sales increases of 24, 25%, I thought you were being a bit too pessimistic, but it looks like we are starting to see a bit of a deceleration here.
Indeed. But as you know, the effect of stock supplies that came as a result of the tsunami in Japan is also having a bearing on the numbers that we see in May. April was obviously as a result of a configuration of many holidays in that month.
So do you think lots of buyers are sitting on the sidelines waiting for those components to arrive here so they can be fitted into the vehicles they want to buy? Do you think there's pent-up demand behind the scenes?
I think there will be, but what we have seen is that dealers also managed to stock ahead of time. So immediately after the tsunami, some of the dealers stocked up to get the required stock levels. But because it's a global impact, that was bound to catch up with us. So within this month and the next few months, we'll still see the effect of the tsunami.
Just looking behind the numbers, we had total vehicle sales up 7.8% month on month, 6.1% year on year. Light commercial vehicles, though, down 8% year on year. Can you read anything into that? Is this perhaps a reflection on what's happening in small businesses?
It is perhaps an indication there, but I can't be very specific in terms of the actual reasons thereof. So our assumption is that it's an indication that the activity in the small business area is not as vibrant as that of the passenger side. So consumers, as individuals, retail consumers, they still have capacity to purchase, and that is a result of the interest rates that we've seen at their lowest levels for some time now. And we don't foresee that there will be increases in interest rates in this year, perhaps towards the end of the year into the next year. So at this stage, I think the passenger market will still be a vibrant market towards the end of the year.
But now when customers are coming in looking for financing at Absa, are they looking at the fact that interest rates are likely to start going up from early next year and factoring that into their financing agreements?
Yes, we see that because there's a preference, for example, for fixed rate options on financing of their vehicles. So there is a demand for that kind of mitigation of risk, if you wish, in terms of the increases in interest rates.
How about customers buying down? Are we still seeing them buying more entry-level models and even used cars?
That is happening. In terms of the used car market, we're still seeing a ratio of about 1.7 used car vehicles to one new. And that may slightly shift as a result of the stock supply on new vehicles. We will see how that pans out in the next 2 months. In terms of the level entry vehicles, that's for sure is a preference of consumers. As you know, transportation costs have also gone up because of fuel price increases. So that affects the choice of vehicle that consumers make. They would like to go into vehicles that are easier and light to maintain in terms of fuel consumption.
Now, how about all these dreadful toll fees we're facing up here in Gauteng, particularly on that N1 highway? Is that also a consideration? Because that is going to impact on disposable income, isn't it?
It will be a consideration as part of the transportation costs. So if you take a normal worker who travels between Johannesburg and Pretoria, when they start factoring in all these costs, including the toll fees, they will be forced to review their financial aspects, including the vehicles that they finance, and one would assume that they'll go for an even cheaper kind of vehicle in order to afford the transportation costs as well.
Exports up 11.3% month on month, down almost 9% year on year though. What can you read into that? Are we seeing healthy growth in our export market for vehicles?
Yeah, I think year to year it's a growth of 24.2%, so there's still vibrancy there. But that market would also be impacted by what happened globally in terms of the tsunami. So the effect specifically in terms of how South African producers were affected for vehicles that they export is something that we haven't necessarily seen the specific detail thereof. But I would suppose that in the next 2 months we will still see a little bit of effect on the numbers of exports.
Debt levels still high, around 77.6% at this stage. Are you seeing any improvement in the balance sheet of the customer who comes into Absa applying for finance?
The same type of customer is still applying, so we haven't seen an improvement, if you wish, in quality, nor a drop in quality. So we see stability in terms of the quality. But in terms of the way we assess finance, we certainly are making sure that we finance the right type of quality of customer.
Well, we saw those credit extension numbers after the beginning of the weekend. There's a slight pickup in credit extension to the private sector. Is any of that coming through to the vehicle sector?
It is coming through. If you look at the passenger growth, the passenger market is quite vibrant. So in terms of that effect, it would still have that effect. So fuel, the ability of consumers to spend has improved somewhat. And as I indicated, the interest rates have also made sure that from a consumption point of view, there's sufficient capability from a individual perspective to get into deals.
How about the average term of finance? Has that changed at all? Because previously when you've come in talking about customers trying to get cars financed over perhaps 72 months, whereas the norm used to be maybe 60 months, are you still seeing that trend?
We're still seeing the trend. The preference is still going towards longer periods in order to afford the repayments on vehicles that consumers would otherwise not be able to afford if it was a shorter period. So there is indeed specific interest towards longer periods.
And what would you advise customers coming into Absa to go for those longer periods, or rather to buy down a little bit?
It is always advisable to buy down and keep it shorter, because as you know, even in terms of the value of vehicles from a retail value point of view, that gets affected as the period gets longer. However, if the customer involved is of good quality in terms of risk, that doesn't become an issue.
How would you describe, just in closing, the health of the vehicle market in South Africa at this stage?
I would say it is healthy. It is in line with what we expected for the year, and that we're still going to end up the year at a fairly good increase if you compare to last year. But obviously the effects of the tsunami would have had a negative impact slightly on the overall numbers.
I'm sure you're looking forward to a tsunami of sales as the year progresses, though. Sydney, we have to leave it there. Thanks very much for coming in today.